But in that darkest moment, I found that rope. And what that rope reminded me of was all the quiet time that we sat in the team meeting room and we wrote down the things that we were thankful for and we were grateful for. And as you can imagine, the things I would write down during those times, I still have my winner's manuals where my family, God, the chance to get better, the chance to be a Buckeye. And I was reminded of how much there is in this life.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. Today on the podcast, my new friend, Rory Nicol. Rory has an incredible story. He's going to take you into his life as a top football recruit, into addiction, and now into what he's doing to give back hope. You're absolutely going to love this dialogue. He's so real. He's so vulnerable. We actually did it in my home studio, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. Make sure you stay on all the way to the end for the 3 and 5, 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. So now a quick word from our partner, and here's my conversation with Rory Nicol. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for the first time ever in person interview in the home studio, Rory Nicol's. Rory, thank you so much for driving all the way to Centerville and agreeing to be on the podcast.
Tony, thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be with you today.
Dude, you have lived an incredible life. You've played football, you've done sales. You and I met at a nonprofit that we're both very passionate about called Emerge. So as we jump into your story, tell us a bit about Emerge and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, you're right. Emerge is such a great concept. It's a Trades Institute and Rehabilitation Center that's here in Greene County, founded by 3 men who own some HVAC companies. And I got introduced to Emerge from Coach Tressel. He was the keynote speaker at the signature event last year, almost a year ago today. And I went with him as a guest, and I got to learn about their mission, which is to help those who are struggling with addiction find sobriety and meaningful work. And I fell in love with the people leading it and the mission, and the rest is history.
Now, you mentioned Coach Tressel. It's a great way to jump into a little bit of your story. You were one of the top recruits, if not the top tight end out of Pennsylvania, coming out of high school. You decided to go to the Ohio State University, go Buckeyes, which I'm a huge fan of. Tell us about the recruiting process and what made you say yes to Coach Tressel and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a question I love because it's very easy for me to answer. You're right. I was the number 2 tight end in the nation, actually, in 2004, coming out of high school.
Wow.
And all the schools in America recruited me. But there was something different at Ohio State. And that I got recruited by Joe Daniels, who was the quarterback coach from the Slippery Rock area of Western PA. I'm from Beaver, PA, just outside of Pittsburgh. And when Coach Daniels and Coach Tressel came to my high school, we would meet in the guidance counselor's office, and there was something very different about them. And I've taken this everywhere I've gone in my life, and that is that they only talked about the good that they were doing. There was never a day that Ohio State came to recruit me in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and talked about any other school or tried to throw shade at the Michigan team or the Penn State team recruiting me. They were talking about the Youngkin Success Center they were building for student athletes, the new facility that was underway at Ohio State, the GPA that they had increased since their time at Ohio State, and the charitable work they were doing in the community. And those are the reasons I fell in love with Tressel and ultimately chose to be a Buckeye.
Tell me about the experience as a highly recruited athlete. You get onto the campus of Ohio State. We all know, if you're from Ohio, or if you've watched college football at all, college football is kind of a way of life. I can't imagine what it was like to go onto a campus and be one of the guys. Like, oh, that's, so-and-so, he plays for the Buckeyes. What was that experience like as a 18-year-old kid? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it was something else. And, being a Western PA guy, I grew up very close to the University of Pittsburgh, and Penn State's a big school, obviously, for Pennsylvania, too. So getting to Ohio State, I knew what I was getting into, but you don't really know what you're getting into until you get there. Ohio State football is a way of life. And I think Coach Tressel did a great job of preparing us for that. We spent a lot of time talking about the things that we were grateful for, We had a winner's manual that really grounded us. He always would talk to us about the first hour of your day is the rudder of your day. And we would start our days with quiet time where we would write down the things that we were thankful for, the things that we were grateful for. And then there'd be a section in our winner's manual that would be about a fundamental for winners. So that an example of that would be love, discipline, handling adversity. So we were rooted in the things, the values that we had as a team. And we were kind of trained right away, to shut out the outside noise and to stay focused on the team and our goals at hand. So he did a great job of preparing us for that. And we had a great group of guys that were our teammates. So we were a big deal maybe to the outside, but on the inside, we were just a bunch of guys that loved football and each other.
That sounds incredible. My research said that you kind of came in and had some immediate impact. You were able to contribute early in your career at Ohio State, and then you suffered kind of a life-altering injury, I think, as I know your story a little bit more. Tell everyone a little bit about the injury, about what happened, and take us through that season of your life that was different.
Yeah, you're right. So I came to Ohio State in 2004, and as a freshman, I played. I wasn't the starter, but I got meaningful playing time, and I went into my second year with every intention of earning the starting job, and it was going to be a fight, but I had an opportunity to really become a starter at Ohio State at a young age. And in camp, God had other plans for me. We were, and I think our first day, or I think the first week of two-a-days, and I had a non-contact injury. I jumped to catch a pass in a 7-on-7 drill, and I felt like somebody had stepped on my foot. But in retrospect, I just jumped, and I ended up tearing a ligament in the middle of my foot. I had a Liz Franck sprain,
Wow.
which put me out for the year. So I wasn't able to bear weight for about a year. I didn't do surgery, but that year did change my life, to your point. When I got hurt, I redshirted, which didn't mean much other than you weren't going to play on Saturdays. You were still a part of the team, but I wasn't able to contribute. So all of my family, my team, they were focused on the goal at, playing and practicing, and I wasn't able to do those things. So I ended up hanging out with some new people, making some new relationships that led me down a different road. And my second year at Ohio State, I got introduced to drugs. And from that point forward, my life did change. Alcohol and drugs became a part of me, and they took control of me for most of that second year. And throughout the rest of my career at Ohio State, I was intermittently dealing with addiction. I was able to mask it to the public, and I ended up starting my last 3 years. But I always had that demon inside of me. And it wasn't until recently that I was able to break free from addiction. But definitely that phase in my life changed everything for me.
One of the interesting things that you said right then is that God had different plans for you. I imagine that there's a leader who's listening or watching right now, and they're thinking, how could God have a plan for you that would take you away from something you worked for your entire life? Like at this point, football had become a career for you. It was your path. You were on a trajectory, by all accounts, to go into the NFL and make life-altering money and change everything. How now can you look back in hindsight and say, God had a different plan for me, and it started in what most people would say would be one of the worst moments of your life?
Yeah, I think, when you're living your life addicted, you are very selfish. And the reality is that all you're doing is living for your addiction and trying to feed your addiction.
I imagine, Rory, that there are a lot of leaders who are listening right now who are really interested by the idea that it appears as if you have so much gratefulness for that season in your life that changed everything. How did you develop a good perspective on what most people would call one of the worst moments of your life, getting injured in a non-contact injury when you're about to start at Ohio State?
Yeah, it took time. It takes time for God's plan to be revealed. So I think that throughout, over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, I've gone through so much and I've learned so much. That's brought me the peace that I have today. It was a slow process, but as I look back on that non-contact injury, there's no doubt in my mind that that was a divine incident that has led me to where I am today, which is exactly where I need to be. So it just takes time. It takes time, commitment, and discipline, and trust, and hope, which is investing now in God's certain future, that one day you're going to know exactly what it is he had planned for you. And I think I'm inching closer to that every day.
What do you think would have happened if we fantasize for just a moment? What do you think would have happened if you would have went to the NFL?
I don't think I would have been able to handle the money very well. And I think I would have been drowning in an addiction at an earlier age, unable to handle the responsibilities that had been given to me.
I've had the opportunity to hear you talk, and you do a beautiful job of sharing your story. One of the things that you talk about is kind of that rock bottom moment. There was a moment in your story when you decided that you were going to end your own life. I'm wondering if you could share that story and the process of getting off of rock bottom.
Yeah. Definitely went through some really dark times throughout this journey of addiction. And I would tell you it got really bad around the COVID years. And COVID changed America as we know it. But I also ended up going through a divorce, losing the custody of my children,
Hmm.
and living in some very dark moments. I got to the point where I wasn't believing in God. I was isolated almost 90% of my life. And you're right, I had written my goodbye letter to the world, and I had decided I was going to get a bunch of drugs and alcohol, and I was going to intentionally overdose. And I ran into a problem. I ran into a problem with that plan because I had done all of the drugs I had, and I had drank all the alcohol I had, and I was still alive.
Wow.
So I frantically went into my basement, and I was looking to find any drugs that maybe I had stashed. And I'm looking through this container and I find this tin can. You know, during Christmas, people send you cookies, right? And
Sure.
they come in these tin containers. They're usually round and it's hard to get the lid off. It was something like that, but this was square. And it, I think, held a fossil watch that we had gotten from one of our bowl games. And inside of that tin container were some knickknacks. There was a Buckeye. There was an American flag pin for the lapel of your jacket. And there was a small piece of rope that looked a lot like this. And that rope was given to me during my time at Ohio State by Coach Tressel. And I remember when he gave us that rope, he said to us, "This is a symbol of your life." And in that season, it was, you know, a rope has two ends to it, right? So you're holding one end and your teammates are on the other end. So they need you. Don't ever let go of that rope. But he said, as he always did, take these lessons with you because this will happen in your life. You're going to go through different seasons where there's different things on the end of your rope. Like when you get done with college or the NFL, your career is going to be really important. And then hopefully you find somebody you love and your family is going to become really important. Then you're going to have kids. So what's on the end of that rope is going to change. But in that darkest moment, I found that rope. And what that rope reminded me of was all the quiet time that we sat in the team meeting room and we wrote down the things that we were thankful for and we were grateful for. And as you can imagine, the things I would write down during those times, I still have my winner's manuals where my family, God, the chance to get better, the chance to be a Buckeye. And I was reminded of how much there is in this life. But more importantly, and most importantly than anything, I was reminded of what Tress said, never let go of your rope. And I decided in that moment that I was going to surrender the other side of my rope to God. And I was going to ask him to hold on to that rope. And I was going to do everything I could to not fall. And he pulled me out of this place and he got me to where I am today. And that's why I'm here.
One of the things that I know is that the journey of sobriety is a long, intense journey. How do you get the right mindset when you know that you're climbing such a large mountain that you can't see the peak when you're in the midst of trying to get sober? How did you work through that daily grind?
I still do. I'm working my program every day. And one of the things or some of the things that I do that I find are very helpful for me is I give back. I think about what are the things that are important to me? And a couple things come to mind, and that is my sobriety, my faith, my family. But I find that when I give my time away and when I give love away, it multiplies and it comes back to me. So I attack every day by writing down the things I'm thankful for. I've gotten very involved with Emerge, to your point. I mentor some incarcerated youth that are in the Trades Institute at the Emerge Center right now, and I find a lot of grounding in that. I write an immense amount. I read an immense amount. but mainly I take it day by day. I take it day by day. I'm thankful for the wins, and I just keep moving forward.
One of the things that's so inspiring to me is the way that you have thought about your mission statement. And I know that you have mission statement, and then there's also some parts to your work that you do. And so, I'm wondering if you could share the story about your mission statement, what that looks like, how you kind of came to its conclusion.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's very important to know exactly what it is we are working for. And as I mentioned, I work with these three youth in at the Emerge Center, and we sit down once every 3 weeks. We have lunch. We start with quiet time. We write down some things that we're thankful for, and we review a fundamental for winners. And just recently, we started working on our mission statement,
Hmm.
which none of them love, but I start first. I tell them, hey, I'm going to be the first one here. I'm going to lead this process, and we've come a long way. But my mission statement is very clear. I am interested in helping athletes, addicts, and underprivileged youth, specifically incarcerated youth, by sharing my story and giving my time. And by doing that, my hope is that I can prevent some people that are going down a road similar to mine to not have to make some of the mistakes I've made. I think that the journey I went down was divine, and it absolutely was necessary to get me to where I am right now. But I don't think everybody has to go down this road. So I'm very interested in sharing my story in hopes that I can prevent some people from making the same mistakes, or just give them another route to my house, right? There's several streets you can go down to get there. I just know the way I went, there's a better option.
That better option for you talks about four different kind of lessons that you've learned over the years. Share with us those four lessons and why they mean so much.
Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying, a lot of my story has to do with my time at Ohio State, but the first hero in my life was my dad. I get emotional thinking about that because without my dad, I wouldn't be here. I mean, my dad taught me the value of hard work. He taught me what it meant to be a man. And, we grew up on a dairy farm. We didn't have a lot, but man, he loved me and he still loves me. So I don't ever want there to be confusion that my first hero is my father. But the four lessons that you're referencing are, they have a lot to do with Ohio State, and they have a ton to do with Jim Tressel. The first thing is that I chose to be a Buckeye. I could have gone to any school in America, and I chose to be an Ohio State Buckeye. So that is one of the four things that makes it very clear to me that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. The journey I've taken is exactly the journey I should have done. And the assignment that we're trying to execute is part of my assignment from God in furthering his creation here on earth. So that's number one, but I'm going to take you to number four really quickly. And that is a recent conversation I had with Coach Tressel, continued to evolve in my desire to share my story. I had the opportunity to talk to Notre Dame. And Marcus Freeman is a teammate of mine who is now the head coach at Notre Dame. And he gave me this opportunity. And when I got done, he had some very kind words to say to me. And he shared some of those really kind words with Coach Tress. And we were talking on a Sunday after church, me and Coach Tressel. And I said, what do you think Marcus is saying this for? I'm just a normal guy sharing my story. And Tress said to me, he's telling you this because it's true, Rory. You can never, as a leader, put your people in front of a person who's going to share a story of overcoming adversity, of resilience, because not every story speaks to everybody, but you can never hear enough good stories because you never know when you're going to need them. So that's the fourth bullet. But now let me go back to two. The second part of this four bullet journey here is that when I was at Ohio State, we never lost to Michigan. So we're 5-0 against the Michigan Wolverines. But one of the years, my third year, which was my first year as a starter, we had beat that team, but Lamar Woodley was their defensive end, who was an All-American, all-star guy, who ended up going on to get drafted in the first round by the Pittsburgh Steelers, my hometown, go Steelers. But man, I had my hands full with him that Saturday afternoon, and I was eager to get back to work. So Sunday morning, I woke up very early. It's like 5:30 in the morning, and we had these little key fobs that you would scan to get into the facility. Well, it didn't work. So I'm sitting in the parking lot. I'm waiting for somebody to come in so I can get back in there and get to work. And here comes the old red truck. Maybe some of you don't know, but Coach Tress drove this old red truck during the season because he was just a normal guy going to work. Well, here comes the old red truck. Here comes Coach. He gets out. He says, Roar, what are you doing here? I said, Coach, I know we won the game, man, but I got work to do. I'm not happy with how I played. So we walked around the parking lot, not another car other than his and mine, and we picked up the trash because that's what Tress did. But during those 3 or 4 minutes, he shared some wisdom with me, and he told me the story that I'll never forget. And that was that the people that become great in life, and this didn't only apply to football, they learn from the mistakes of the people that have come before them. In football, that was really easy, right? The Michigan game was the last game. You had a whole season of film to watch to learn the techniques and the tendencies of different players. But what about in life when there are mistakes being made that people aren't sharing? So that story has always compelled me to continue to have the courage to share my story in hopes that I can help other people, because not everybody has the courage to share the story. Not everybody has my story. But I know that this is, again, part of my assignment, because long ago, Coach Tressel told me to be great, you learn from those who came before you. And the good Lord gave me an opportunity to share that story to allow other people to be great, to prevent them from making some of these mistakes. Number three. Number three is a story about a team meeting we had. And we walk into the team meeting room, everybody's in their seats, and Coach Tress walks in. We start our day with quiet time. And this day was a little bit different. We walk in, he gets to the podium, and he holds up a little piece of rope. It looks like this. And there's somebody handing it out, passing it down the aisle. So every guy gets a small little piece of rope. And he tells us this very short story. And I don't remember the story perfectly, but what I do remember is every guy got a piece of rope. And the moral of the story was that we are all connected by this rope, and there's two ends of this rope. So you need to hold on to your end because your teammates are counting on you. But like any great leader, any great football coach who taught us at such a young age about life, he shared that this again was going to be something we could take with us. So don't lose this rope, and evaluate your rope. What's on the other end of that rope is going to change from time to time, but keep it in a place where you can find it, because you never know when you're going to need it. So that takes us back to number 4. Why did people like Marcus think that my time sharing my story with Notre Dame was valuable? Was because he thinks it's a valuable lesson for the young men that are part of that program. And what Tressel told me recently about you never know when you're going to need the rope was just validated. I got this piece of rope when I was I don't know, 3rd or 4th year player at Ohio State. And 15 years later in my life, in the darkest moment of my life, when I had written my final goodbye to the universe, I found this piece of rope in my basement, and it saved my life. So when I get the opportunity to talk about my story, I think the rope is a huge part of it. And everywhere I go, I give people a piece of the rope, and I let them know that there are two ends to the rope, and you have to hold on to your end, and you have to evaluate the things on your rope. And for me, my rope is comprised of 3 things, 3 values, that below these values come many others, but the top 3 are God, love, and character. And there are times you have to cut your rope to remove things from it. But here's a beautiful thing about every time you have to cut your rope, which can be hard. Somebody told me when you cut your rope, think about, like I said, in that darkest moment of my life, I handed that other end of the rope to God. And I begged him to hang on, and I would fight as hard as I could too. Every time that piece of rope gets cut, God ties it back together. And guess what? We get a little closer to God. So that's the beauty of the rope for me. And those are the 4 bullet points, are the 4 things in my life that happened from roughly 2004 to 2022 that when I tie them together, make it absolutely clear I have an assignment from God to share my story to help people that are like me get through hard times.
Wow. I love your vulnerability. I love your heart. One of the things that's interesting to me is that there's probably a leader listening who, at this point in time, goes, Rory, I don't know if I'm too old to do some of the things that you're thinking about. I don't know if my life's a little too far gone, or I don't know that I'm going to be surrounded by somebody like your dad or Coach Tressel. Like, I don't know that I have that hero. I don't know that I have that person. What should they do?
Well, it's never too late to start a meaningful life. No matter how old you are, no matter where you're at, go find yourself a piece of rope, cut it into about a 4-inch piece and put it in your pocket, and just hold on. I tell Marcus all the time when I talk to him, man, do something different, but make it easy.
Mm.
So it's not hard to go find a piece of rope, make it about 4 inches and put it in your pocket and just hold on to it. Look at it and think about the things that are on that rope. What do you want them to be? If it's full of alcohol, drugs, lying, stealing, cheating, your life is going to be tough. But you can cut that rope and God will tie it back together. He'll pull you a millimeter closer to Him. And I remind you, it's never, ever too late to start a meaningful life. So no matter where you're at, don't ever let go.
Rory, I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know that the podcast family is going to want to connect with you all over the internet. Where is the best place to learn all things Rory?
So you can, I'm always going to be associated with the Emerge Center in Greene County, which is Xenia, Ohio, but you can also find information at Rory Nicol, that's RORYNICOL.org.
The last question I love to ask people, it's an advice question. I'm going to invite you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice. Knowing all the things that you went through, if you could go back in time on the day that you were injured, sit down with that younger version of yourself, sit knee to knee, hold his hands, look him in the eye, and give him one piece of advice, what would you say?
I would talk to that version of Rory who was this big, bad Ohio State football player the way I talk to my son, Callum, today. And I would tell him it's going to be okay. I would tell him it's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. And I would plead with him to be vulnerable with some people that you know love you and not to keep it all inside. Because those people will help you through it and it's going to be okay. I think my best answer is I would talk to him the way I would talk to my 8-year-old son. And that is that I will always love him. God will always love you. And we will get through this together.
So good. Rory, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today and for agreeing to come on the podcast.
Hey, man, it's a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me, and hold the rope.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the 3 and 5. 3 practical takeaways designed specifically for you. Number 1, gratitude sustains growth. Focusing on gratitude as a part of your daily rhythms and life, it can reframe pain inside your brain, and it actually build a mindset of resilience. When you begin to lean into gratitude, it changes everything. If you're really struggling in a season, I highly recommend starting a gratitude journal. Number 2, you knew this is true. Community is the lifeline. That's right. Recovery, transformation, it requires mentorship, accountability, connection. We weren't meant to do life alone. So find your community. And let's be honest, it takes time to build into that. So you've got to do the work. You have to show up intentionally to build community. Number 3, your story has power. Your story has power. Sharing your journey can bring healing to yourself and hope to others. Just like Rory, he didn't have to share that, but he did because he knows that sharing your story has power. All right, here they are again, the 3 practical takeaways. Number 1, gratitude sustains growth. Number 2, community is the lifeline. And number 3, your story has power. Well, friends, that's our podcast for today. As always, I'm forever thankful for you, the bold ones. Without you, none of this would be worthwhile. So please let me know what you thought about the episode. What were your takeaways? Email me, tony@twmilt.com, or hit me up on Instagram @twmilt. If you found this episode to be particularly beneficial for you, share it with a friend. Maybe another Ohio State football fan or somebody who's struggling with recovery. When we share our story, everyone gets better. Until next time, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.